Hello, audience. This is AM Hounchell from amhounchell.ninja and at Inferno4Dante on Twitter. I am joined by my esteemed guest, Marc D. Crepeaux, the prof.
Your esteemed guest, huh?
My esteemed guest.
So let's do this.
If you did not know already from our countless other times talking about it, Letters Never Meant to Be Read, number 3, volume 3, is going to be coming out in October, which is tomorrow by my account today. Is that correct, Mark?
It's with the beta readers. It's going to come out by the end of October. Hopefully it'll be a Halloween event.
Okay. And obviously we are also rebranding the other 2 Letters books. Is that going to be at about the same time?
Yeah. Letters Volume 1 and Volume 2 are going to be with new covers and new interiors. Second editions rebranded for the release of Volume 3. And possible letters contests. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. And then we are also updating our book that we wrote together, Quintessential Reality.
Quintessential Reality is also going to have a new cover and a new interior, rebranded. And we're going wide with it.
Couple new sentences.
I mean, not everything's going to go wide right away, but Rest Studios Media is going to change a little bit of its tune and go wide with certain titles, for sure. Yep.
Of course. But what we haven't talked about is that beautiful book to your right.
Oh.
Right next to your head, in fact. So
My
your first book. Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And you were actually rebranding that as well.
I am, yeah, because it was under my original publisher, and I've been so busy with other people's stuff, and I just haven't put out my own first book in a re-release yet, which I will. I have a sequel 3/4 of the way written, and I have an idea. I have plotted the third anyway, so Modern Waste is a series. Okay.
Sure. What's it about?
Modern Waste.
Tell us a little bit about it.
It's a dirty crime novel set in North Georgia. It's about meth dealers and weed dealers having a little bit of a territorial turf battle, and each character is just that, a character, for sure. My characterization, I feel, is pretty darn good, and there are no minor characters. Maybe the waitress or something like that, right? But it's also shot in episode format, so each chapter is kind of like an episode of, and it's kind of a mixture of, if you watch these series, Breaking Bad and Sons of Anarchy, it's a little bit of a mixture of those, and each chapter is shot like an episode. It's written like that. It's very visual, and it's written in the style of one of my favorite authors, which is Daniel Woodrell. He wrote Winter's Bone, just made into a movie. It's probably his most popular one. But one of my favorite books of all time is called The Ones You Do by Daniel Woodrell, and I really like his style of writing. It's defined as like country noir kind of style, or country pulp, and that's basically in 2014 I had 3 novels that were halfway finished, and I had to choose one, and I chose this one, and I'm pleased. I mean, it hasn't sold like 1 million copies or anything like that. I think it's going to be a great series under Rusty Wheels Media, under the direction of what I know now versus what I knew then. I was also in a different place in my life where I didn't have a publishing company. I mean, I did, but I wasn't doing anything with it, and we're focused on music. And I was going to school for Russian, so I had different kinds of focus back then, and I felt like I couldn't put out a book by myself when I probably could have at the time. But even so, I probably would be rebranding it at some point. And for whatever reason, I left it on the back burner for so long, and I just sent it to, about a month ago or so. I sent it to another editor. It came back. I reviewed all the changes. I was really happy about this. I'm looking forward to re-releasing it, and it has a great Audible edition anyway. That was narrated by Scott Pullick, the voice of NPR Atlanta, all those years ago. It's out on the West Coast now, but I really like the book. I'm I'm proud of it every time I look at it, every time I read it, every time I crack it open. Um, and I'm definitely happy to be doing a re-release. It kind of gives me a little bit of a fire to finish the sequel and to put out the third book and to continue with Modern Waste as being a brand. And that was my intention from the very beginning, was to do more Modern Waste books in this genre, in the region, with some of the same characters interwoven throughout the different um, books in the series. So, have I said enough yet? Is this what this is about? This is
Oh,
interrogating.
I'm just waiting.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'm interrogating you about Modern Ways. Clearly, you already said that it's inspired by your favorite author, one of your favorite authors,
Yeah.
and you live in Georgia now, at least.
Yeah.
What else inspired Modern Ways?
I lived in North Georgia for like on and off because I've been in the Army. But I lived in
Sure. Did you have to do a lot of meth deals? Is that why?
for about 10 years. No, I originally started writing this book. Actually, I was driving a taxi and going to grad school. I was driving a taxi, and
Okay.
some of the dialogue, and it's very dialogue driven, if you didn't notice, but some of the dialogue and some of the instances are things I heard in my backseat. And I would sit outside of nightclubs in and around Atlanta, and I would just write on my yellow legal pad. In this case, it's not yellow here, but this style with a Sharpie, a fine tip Sharpie, and that's probably my preferred way of writing. Although I've written certain parts of Modern Ways 2 using a voice recorder as well, and I would do that from time to time. But I would sometimes, and there's one chapter, I won't say what it is, but there's one chapter in Modern Ways that was actually I recorded a couple in my backseat, and that's from that. So a lot of the dialogue, a lot of the stuff is very natural and very more real life and less book type dialogue, and that's because I wrote it while driving a taxi around Atlanta. So.
You mentioned a minute ago that you had to choose between that book or two others.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Why that one? What were the other two like?
Well, the other two I've been considering sending to my good friend Hounchell to see if he wants to work on them with me. The other two are very different. So I grew up reading science fiction, and I've always been a huge science fiction fan. I really like Ray Bradbury. He's one of my favorite authors. And so when I originally started writing as an adult, like seriously, sitting down and turning out pages, I started writing on a typewriter, actually, on one of my active duty stints in Virginia. I brought my typewriter with me, and I like the mechanical. I like the clack. It's not an old. I am known to keep and hoard many versions of typewriter, but I have one that's actually right here. I have one that is a very advanced typewriter. It still has the clack, it still has the mechanical thing, but it can also save a document. So I started writing the first book. It's based on, like, it is in the not so distant future. There is space travel involved, but it's based on corporate espionage and conspiracy, right, in the future. So we've got an engineer who is a brilliant designer. He makes he designs all this new equipment that's used out in space and in mining and stuff like that. But there's kind of trouble at home, and that his competitors have sent out some goons and are trying to thwart his success and stuff like that, and they kidnap his wife and stuff happens. So that is there. And then the third one, so there's 3 books in 2014. It's just kind of that I could have finished during grad. And the third one I have actually all plotted out Like it's all there. I use Scrivener, so each chapter has notes for myself, for my future self to plot out. And that one also, is set in not so distant future and is is based around this guy. He's a colonel in the, I guess, Space Force, but it's not called that. So he's sort of at the tail end of his career, and his father dies, and he goes back to Earth to bury his father, and he finds an android that his father had built. And his father was an inventor, but not very successful and stuff like that. And he had built this android that was a boy, and he finds him amongst his father's possessions and stuff that are now his. And the android, though, has like a secret. He has a secret about the company that his father was working for, the invention that he was working on, and the corporate espionage, and and they escape together with the help of a woman that he meets that was actually close to his father, that he didn't know about. And they escape to another planet, and it's like a jungle planet, and they kind of fight off the corporate onslaught, as it were. And who ends up surviving? Well, the android survives, and the children of whoever fled with them to this planet, And so the android is the only one, the only link to the past that is Earth, and the only link to the past that was the mistakes of humanity and things like that. So,
Okay.
very different than a dirty crime novel set in North Georgia, right? I mean,
Sure.
all three of these things were written around the same time, and I chose to go with one, and then in choosing that one led me down certain paths. And my second book, I I wrote Modern Waste, and I didn't do anything for a while. I tried to market, I tried to figure out the book business and stuff like that, and I went to school for it, and I finished my master's degree, and I finished the Russian course, and then I decided that a poetry book would be appropriate to do next, which is Work
Stiff.
Yeah, so Work Stiff became a brand, Work Stiff Poetry and Prose for the Common, and then later Work Stiff Short Stories to Tell Your Boss. And as far as Work Stiff goes, it's a brand itself, just like Modern Waste. I wanted to do something loosely revolved around work, talk about the problems and the plight of the modern American worker, and
Sure.
more in line with Modern Waste than the other two books that I chose not to finish. For now, I may finish them, and they could be really good for sure. But they're not
in the not too distant future.
In the not too distant future, right? And maybe I'll do them with you, or maybe I'll maybe I won't, but I'll certainly finish them at least, because I think they have a good message. But both of those stories, besides Modern Waste, the two stories that didn't make the cut, I guess, in 2014, both of those stories have an android, so have some element of human meets technology, and and the meaning behind that, or something like that. So
sure,
I look at them, and and then I look at Modern Waste 2, and I think, and I look at another story that I have that I'm working on called Body Farm, and that's more like Body Farm is more
in line with Modern Waste.
In line with Modern Waste, in line with the style of Daniel Woodrow, real people, real problems kind of thing. And so is Work Stiff in a way. And then I've got the Letters books, which is more real people, real things,
Sure.
And I've been focused on other people's work the past, say, 2 years more than my own.
Of course.
You
have a lot of books coming out soon.
We have a lot of books coming out. We have a lot of new members of the family, but at some point, probably not probably, at some point, likely, very, very likely during the winter into the spring, it's going to be more focused on Mark and what books I'm putting out, because I have a unique writing style, and I really appreciate my current fan base and the people that liked Modern Waste, the people that like Quintessential Reality, the people that like the Work Stiff short stories. And, you know, like I've asked you to look at Work Stiff short stories to tell your boss and tell me which of those could be its own thing, you know, because I have my mind on like one or two of those that could be its own novel, you know. And I'm thinking about, getting my PhD in writing, because I'm an English professor and I want to teach creative writing, but I don't want to be one of those creative writing English professors that doesn't actually write anything. You know, I meet so many professors that I ask them, you know, what have you written lately? And they don't have any. I meet some that do, but I meet some that haven't written anything at all. So if I'm going to write something, for example, I'm looking at some PhD programs where it's basically, you know, 3 years of writing and critiquing and workshopping, and you, at the end, just like my MFA, at the end, you've got a really solid manuscript that's been vetted. And for that, I'm really thinking about remarking on my time at working at the orphanage/juvie place and writing something in first-person female point of view from that teenage girl orphanage, or it could be third person, in the same vein maybe of Stephen King, a high school English teacher writing Carrie, for example. And so that's kind of the route that I might go with that. But yeah, I mean, as I build the team for Rusty Wheels Media and lettersandbooks.com, that means that I've built a solid infrastructure for my books and other people's books. And then as I build the team, that means that I won't have to do everything. You know, these past couple of years,
of course,
everything. And now we're expanding, we're, you know, changing the dynamics. So I don't have to do everything, so I can write more. So what's your next question?